There we go.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kate Donegal. I'm an admissions counselor here at Syracuse. We are thrilled you are joining us this evening for our college search kickoff. I'm also joined by our Assistant Dean of Admissions, Denny Nicholson. Denny is going to be leading the majority of tonight's session, while I'll be moderating and helping with the Q&A. We are going to give it just a few more moments before we dig in and get started. I want to make sure everyone who's registered tonight, and we do have quite a good group with us, is able to click the link and come into the Zoom session. So while we do pause for that, a couple of quick announcements. We do have a Q&A box available to all participants tonight, or whatever time it is from where you're joining us. So if you came prepared with questions or questions come up for you during the session, please feel free to type those into the Q&A box. My colleagues Mike and Ken are also behind the scenes tonight, and they will be perhaps answering your question right away. And we will also save a few questions for the end to answer live as well. So again, thank you to everyone who signed up tonight and is joining us. My name is Kate Donegal, admissions counselor here at Syracuse, and moderating tonight's session. And with me tonight, of course, is our Assistant Dean of Admissions, Denny Nicholson. So Denny, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you. Feel free to take it away.
Well, thanks so much, Kate, and also thanks to Ken and Mike, who are both behind the scenes along with Kate answering your questions, and I'll answer many of them live in just a bit. So good evening, friends out there, parents and students, prospective students for our college search kickoff. We have a large number on this Zoom this evening, so excited about that. With that said, we may not get to every question this evening. If it so happens we're unable to answer your question, someone from our staff will be responding to your question within the next couple of days. So we will eventually get to you. We'll try to answer as many of those as we can. This is really one of my favorite events. We do several of these throughout the course of the year, and that's because there's so much excitement for many of the students and families on this call. For the parents, it's the first time, perhaps with their oldest child, or maybe a second time. If you've done it more than 2 times, you can probably do this presentation in my place. And there's always a lot of excitement, but also filled with anxiety, and I understand that, and I'm here to help alleviate some of that. I come from a number of perspectives. I'm just about to finish up my 30th year in the college admission business. Very proud to be part of this profession for so long, and hopefully a good 30 years to go, as I enjoy it so much. I'm also the proud parent of 3 children. Our oldest is a college graduate, just a recent graduate. Our favorite is a current sophomore at Syracuse University. And we also have a high school junior. So he will be going on this college search very shortly, alongside many of you who are in the audience this evening. So happy to share those tidbits and maybe all I've learned through the 30 years in the business. And as a parent, there will be some insight that's shared with you this evening and helps you through the process. So like I perhaps mentioned a little bit earlier, I'll spend about 20 minutes going through just a few slides for you, half dozen slides or so to lead the conversation, and then we'll enjoy some Q&A together. I won't be posting my email on here this evening. Perhaps Kate or Ken or Mike can put that into the chat for our audience to see, or you can find me right on the website. If you go to the admission page, you can click on Meet the Team and you'll see my picture and my email. So feel free to reach out at any point. I'm delighted to help you with the search process, whether it's a question specific to Syracuse University or a general college admission question. Always happy to help. So with that said, let's begin. A few slides here to guide the conversation. I always like to start with some information about understanding the numbers, because so few students and families truly understand the numbers of the business that we work in. They hear all kinds of stories from friends, and parents hear stories from their friends about, in our case, Syracuse University received nearly 40,000 applications this year, and they're bringing in a first-year class of 3,600. And there's a big gasp whenever you mention that, because families feel as though we only admit 3,600 of the 40,000 applicants, and that's not true, and it wouldn't be true for any university. Many students say no to us, so we accept many more than that, and that's important to understand, understanding what the actual acceptance rate, not so much how many applied and how many are enrolling, but the real critical piece is understanding, or getting a better understanding rather, of the school's acceptance rate. So there are good resources out there to determine that information. One that I've found helpful over the years for family is called the Common Data Set. And you can often find that right on a college website. Go right to their search button, type in Common Data Set. Syracuse University doesn't publish that on our site, but many universities do, and you'll find that to be helpful. In our case, we admit typically somewhere between 48 and 58% of our applicant pool at Syracuse University to land at our number, and you'll get a wide variety of admission rates from university to university, but I think you'll find the Common Data Set to be a helpful resource for you. Jumping down a bit, setting expectations, and this is really more geared toward the parents that might be in the audience today. I think it's important to set some expectations of your children, and some helpful resources to help you do that include the school counselor. Your school counselors have an abundance of experience working with students and knowing the status of all of their applications at all the schools they apply to each year. So they have a lot of history. If you're asking where might be a good fit for your child in terms of, is it a REACH school? Is it a school where they're very likely to get in? Is it a school where they're clearly going to be an admissible candidate by all indicators? A school counselor can be a great resource to you. So I think that helps set some expectations about whether or not it might be a REACH school for your son or daughter, or whether it appears they're going to be a great candidate at a particular school. So that's helpful in terms of setting expectations. Also worth considering the cost of attendance. At this stage, I don't think cost of attendance should be a factor in terms of preventing a student from applying to a college or university and having that on their list. You know, sometimes it's important to have some caution about falling in love with a school that's extremely expensive and you're not quite certain you'll be able to afford it. But I don't think it should prevent from applying. So always worthwhile to apply to an institution. Universities have tremendous resources to fund students to come to their campuses, and you should be in play. But the time may come where there's a family decision that a student simply and a family cannot afford a particular school. And those are conversations you need to have with your children about setting clear expectations. Before I go on to the next slide, I also want to point out something that's really critical to speak about, because we're living in some different times, and that has to do with COVID and its impact on all of our students out there, grading and how remote courses and things of that nature. And a message from me and from my colleagues at Syracuse University are for our students to really focus on the things that they can control. So what's in your control? If you're a junior in high school, what's in your control is what's available to you for the remainder of your junior year, your courses, and how you perform in those courses. You can still control that. And you can control your senior year. You can control the courses you elect to take, as well as how you perform in those courses. What you cannot control at this point, if you're a junior in high school, are your grades from freshman and sophomore year. You can't control the fact that you had anticipated being involved in the school play in the spring of your sophomore year and COVID hit and the school play didn't take place, or you were going to be the captain of the lacrosse team and no sports took place in the spring. Those are things you can't control at this point. And you have to understand and trust that colleagues like my colleagues at Syracuse University, as well as across the country working in college admissions, you have to trust the fact that we understand that you're not penalized because you didn't play the sport or you were not in the school play during that time frame. Fingers crossed, you'll be back to school in the fall if you're not already on a full-time basis, and you'll have those opportunities once again to be engaged, not just in person in the classroom, but also in school activities. Some helpful resources to our students and families in the audience. Many of you attend high schools that utilize a service called Naviance. And I know so many of you are familiar with that. If not, SCORE, as you can see on my screen, is another big player in this industry. And they have some tremendous resources available to you to help with the college search, namely with Naviance, one that I found particularly helpful with my own children. And I recommend it to all families for those who have Naviance at their high schools, is there's a scattergram feature, and you can run scatter plots. And basically what that is, you can obviously, you know your son or daughter's GPA. And in some instances, not as much these days, but in many cases, you know their SAT or ACT scores. And these scattergrams will give you an indication from your particular high school over the past several years of the students from the school that applied to a particular university, what the status was of the decision rendered for those students. So for example, you attend a school and you're a junior in high school, and you want to see from your high school how students have fared in the admission process at Syracuse University. You can type in Syracuse University, you can see the GPAs, and if SAT scores were taken or ACT scores, you'll be able to see the test scores. Of course, you can't see the individual students' names and things of that nature, but you are able to see a GPA, SAT, and ACT score, and ultimately the decision from Syracuse University, admit, waitlist, or deny. And that helps determine whether or not this might be a reach school. It might be a perfect fit for you, where you think the odds are quite high that you will be admitted, or frankly that it's completely out of reach. No one in the last several years, over 50 students applied to Syracuse from your high school, and no one with your GPA has ever been admitted. Clearly that's going to be a reach school for you, and so that's again getting back to setting expectations. A few other resources, as you can see there, collegeresults.org and Big Future are often utilized as well, and you can simply Google those or go right to the direct websites and you'll find information. On the financial side, I'm going to talk about net price calculators. That is a federal mandate that every college and university have a net price calculator on their website. So if you go to the Syracuse Financial Aid website, you'll see a net price calculator, and these are helpful in giving students and families a gauge for what the cost might be to attend, in this case, Syracuse University. You'll have the opportunity to do that at any schools you might be considering, with a caveat there that these are not as precise as we would all like them to be. It may give you some idea, but again, not as precise as we would all prefer that they be as parents and certainly as professionals in our business, but it can be a helpful resource to you. I'd really like to emphasize the next two bullets. The free application for federal student aid, referred to as the FAFSA, and the CSS profile, that stands for the College Scholarship Service Profile Form. Most institutions, for students to receive federal aid consideration and grant aids from specific colleges and universities, are going to be required to complete the free application for federal student aid. A number of institutions, including Syracuse, also require the College Scholarship Service, or CSS, profile form. What's important to know here is it's imperative that those forms are completed by the deadlines associated with the particular colleges and universities. These two forms for financial aid become available on October 1st of the student's senior year. So if you're a junior in high school, you cannot complete these forms now, but you should be doing them as soon after October 1st as possible. And they're looking at prior year tax information. So they're going back 2 years, and you'll all have that information available. In our case, the deadline for those forms is January 1st. If you have those forms in by January 1st for regular admission, you receive full consideration for financial aid, both on the federal level, the state level, as well as Syracuse University dollars. For early decision, our deadline is November 15th. And again, full consideration given provided you meet that deadline. If you miss that deadline, you do not receive full consideration for aid. So I want to clearly emphasize that point. And the last one, which is a tremendous resource, I am personally a huge fan of this particular product. It's called Raise Me. You can Google that. It'll lead you right to their website. And I would encourage our students out in the audience to perhaps strongly consider creating an account. And these Raise Me allow students to receive micro scholarships throughout their high school years, and you can retroactivate this. So if you're a junior, you can sign up for Raise Me right now and begin plugging in the things that you've done in high school from 9th and 10th grade, as well as 11th grade, and you'll continue to input the information. So how it works in essence is in each school sets it up differently in terms of their parameters. It allows you to earn up to $10,000 in micro scholarships by the time you graduate from high school. And if you're admitted to Syracuse, you receive a $10,000 Raise Me scholarship per year. And basically you get so many points if you're on the honor roll each semester, if your GPA is above a certain threshold each semester, if you're involved in specific activities. So just to give you some idea of how that works. So go to Raise Me, create your account, and take full advantage of those micro scholarships. And it's offered at Syracuse University, and you'll see the list of all the participating universities on the Raise Me site. So if you have several universities you're considering that are Raise Me partners, take full advantage. Some factors in your search, I like to quickly highlight the enrollment options. When you apply to colleges and universities, there are typically a number of options for application. I'll start with what Syracuse University offers. We have 2 enrollment options that I've quickly alluded to earlier, and that's ED for early decision and RD for regular decision. Those are the 2 Syracuse University options. Our early decision deadline is November 15th, regular decision January 1st, same deadlines for admission as well as financial aid applications. Early decision is a binding program where you indicate by applying early decision to Syracuse in mid-November that if admitted, you will agree to attend Syracuse University and withdraw any applications you may have submitted elsewhere. You're only allowed to apply early decision to one institution. So you apply early decision to Syracuse, you're welcome to apply regular decision at several others. But if admitted at Syracuse through early decision, you then must notify the others that you're committing to Syracuse. And you have to commit if and only if you're admitted into your top choice school or college within Syracuse University. And also that the financial aid award is feasible for your family. And I mentioned regular decision. Universities that offer regular decision, that's typically a set notification date. So there's an admission deadline, in our case, January 1st, and then a regular decision starts going out around mid-March typically. There are 2 other options. They're not at Syracuse, but many universities offer EA, which is early action. Simply apply early on in the admission process. You can apply early action to the many schools that might offer it that are on your list, and you simply find out early on in the process if you've been admitted, but no obligation. It's not binding. You'll have until May 1st to make your decision. at any of those schools, May 1st of your senior year, of course. And then there's a rolling admission RA, and that some universities offer this, not Syracuse, but many institutions have rolling admission. And that simply means applications roll in and out on a first come, first served basis. The sooner you apply, the sooner you hear back from the university. So other factors in the search that will be important to us, I want all of you to think critically about your curriculum choices. This is something, as I alluded to earlier, you have control over next year as perhaps rising juniors and seniors. You have choices about courses to take. We encourage you to take strong courses in high school to challenge yourself academically. That's going to strengthen your chance of admission. If your particular high school offers AP courses, and let's say they offer 15 AP courses, to be the best candidate for Syracuse University, if AP are the most challenging courses at your high school, it's going to enhance your chances of admission if you take a number of them. Do not misinterpret what I've stated. There is no expectation in that example that you would take 15 AP courses, but you would help your case if you've taken several of them. The stronger the curriculum, the better the opportunity for admission. Following that would be how you perform within your program. So, and that's second for a reason. Curriculum choices are most important, and then how you perform right after that. So basically looking at GPA and how you've done throughout your time. Personal fit, right? Are you looking for a large campus? Are you looking for rural, suburban? You're looking for an inner city institution? Those are factors that you might think about. Are you looking for a big place, with 60,000? Are you looking at a medium-sized place like Syracuse University with 15,000 plus? Are you looking for big-time athletics like a Syracuse University and the ACC? Do you want school spirit? Little plug for Syracuse, the #1 ranked school spirit institution in the United States, very proudly. Are you looking for school spirit, or are you looking for a small liberal arts place, right? So personal fit are things to keep in mind. Test optional policies. We have announced that we will be test optional again next year. So if you are a current high school junior, you will not be required to submit a test score to Syracuse University next year. Beyond next year, we're uncertain at this point, so stay tuned if you're a sophomore in high school currently, whether or not that policy will remain. A lot of questions have been coming in. Should we take the SAT and ACT? We've had that conversation in our own house, and frankly, my son took the ACT yesterday, encouraged him to take the SAT and ACT because who knows, some of his schools on the list might in fact require the SAT or ACT, and he'll have a choice, as you will. You'll have a choice at many institutions as to whether or not you'd like to submit a score. It might help you if you have a really high score to submit a test score. So give yourself that option, and I'm recommending you consider sitting for an exam or two. Essays and supplemental questions. So the Common Application offers 7 essay questions. Students have a choice. They pick one of them. And then many universities have supplemental essay questions. Syracuse University does have a supplemental question. We did have some questions from the audience in the last session about this. Will our supplemental question change? I'm not certain just yet, and we probably will not know that until mid-July or so. But chances are there will still be one supplemental question required for Syracuse University, in addition to the one essay question required on the Common Application. Recommendations, in our case, we require a recommendation from the school counselor as well as 2 teacher recommendations. That's something you'll check on at each institution that you're considering about their requirements. Demonstrated interest, important to note here. We do track demonstrated interest. What do we mean by that? This is a great example this evening. You signed up for this event, you're on the Zoom call this evening, you checked in, we have that noted in our system. That's demonstration of your interest in Syracuse University. We'll be offering interviews perhaps later in the summer and throughout the fall semester. You'll have an opportunity to sit down and meet with one of our counselors, either perhaps in person or certainly virtually. That's a great demonstration of interest. We visit your high schools in many cases, and or virtually, and you sign up and you fill out a card for us. All that information is really important to us as we consider who we're going to admit in the class. Tips for virtual sessions, we have virtual sessions going on daily at Syracuse these days. We have them specific for the university in general, general sessions about the university, sessions like this as well. And then we have each of our schools and colleges doing sessions on a regular basis. So if you have a particular academic interest, you can learn the specifics through a school college presentation. And there's an opportunity to get involved in all these virtual sessions. There are probably questions in the Q&A already about visits. We have just opened up our doors last Monday for self-guided tours for freshmen, sophomore, and juniors in high school. And for seniors who've been admitted to Syracuse, it's either self-guided by choice or by default. We have limited guided tour opportunities that students can sign up for if they've been admitted to Syracuse. But once those fill up, the other students have to go on a self-guided tour. So please come up and see us, and fingers crossed, we are hoping we might be able to have some visitors this summer. So you high school juniors, we're hoping we might have an opportunity to do self-guided tours this summer. I'll make one final statement about our opening plans for the fall. We have every anticipation of being open for in-person instruction this fall. Where we will be, if all goes according to plan, back to normal, so to speak, and we will be requiring vaccinations with some exceptions, of course, but that statement came out just last week as well. There will be an expectation that all entering students at Syracuse, all students at Syracuse University will be vaccinated, again, with some exceptions given religious traditions as well as health concerns. So I am going to pause there and I'll turn it over to Kate, who will hopefully be able to feed me some questions, and we'll tackle some Q&A.
Yes, thank you, Denny. So we've had quite a few questions come in, some of which you've taken care of already, so that's great. The first question we'd love to direct your way is regarding how Syracuse looks at GPA. Do we look at weighted or unweighted GPA? What if a student's school does not have a GPA to offer? How do we consider all of that in the process?
Sure, great question, and a common one that we receive. So first and foremost, we recalculate everything to a 4.0 GPA scale. So 100 GPA gets to a 4.0, 11-point scales get converted to a 4.0. We do factor in weighted or unweighted, whatever is highest, that's often weighted. We do factor that in. If there is no GPA if there is no GPA on the transcript, but there are grades on the transcript, we will calculate a GPA. In some instances, there is no GPA on the transcript, it's simply narrative, and we are just making a full assessment based on the narrative for each particular course taken at those schools.
Great, thank you. Next question. Are both FAFSA and CSS required to apply to Syracuse? How do we look at that?
Yeah, this is a really important distinction for me to make. So two separate processes here. So the question is if the FAFSA and CSS profile are required for admission. The answer to that is no, and we typically wouldn't know your financial status when we make an admission decision. So we review for admission, and separately after admission decisions are made, we're looking at financial aid possibilities. It is, however, important that if you're planning to apply for financial aid, that you do so by the same deadline as admission. So if you're hoping to receive any type of Syracuse grant money, which is need-based, state dollars, federal dollars, you need to fill out both the FAFSA form and the CSS profile form by November 15th for early decision, January 1st for regular decision. If it's merit only and you're not going to qualify for financial aid, you know that, you've been through it with another school with an older child, speaking to parents here, then you can simply apply to Syracuse, and we consider everyone for merit money, even if FAFSAs and CSS profiles are not on file.
Thank you. Next question is about test scores. If a student chooses not to submit their test scores, how does Syracuse consider their application?
Sure. As you hear from probably many institutions, it's a holistic review process for us. We focused a bit more this year on curriculum choices that were this was our first year for context in test optional. Using in the test optional world, shall we say. And we spent a considerable amount of time assessing what courses were available to the student at his or her particular high school. And as a side note, every high school sends along a school profile with the student's application. The guidance counselor, school counselor sends that along. If you're not familiar with it, it's probably right on your high school website. And that's a snapshot of your school. It indicates to colleges and universities if AP courses are available, and if so, which AP courses, what's the grading scheme? Is it a 4.0? Is it weighted? Is it a 100 scale? What % of the recent graduating classes went directly into four-year institutions, two-year institutions, directly to employment or the military? A lot of helpful information on those school profiles. So we're assessing, okay, what was available to the student, and then what did he or she elect to take from that list of courses? And so we spend some time there. Obviously, we're then looking at your performance. If you do submit test scores, they are a factor. If not, no problem. Won't hurt your chances whatsoever. And then it's all those other things. It's your recommendations, it's the essays, it's your involvement. And I think what's changed over the years in terms of involvement that I'd like to highlight quickly is, I think that it used to be where you'd hear oftentimes from college representatives saying, broad brushstroke, do as many extracurricular activities as you can. And I think that's changed a little bit over the years. We certainly like students to have some quantity in terms of involvement, but there's a depth factor here these days as well. How deep did you go with a particular activity, or did you quit everything after the first year, or did you just play a small role in many clubs and activities versus really digging in deep and in-depth experiences in one or two activities? So I would highlight the quality and the level of depth is really important to us these days, because we need musicians, we need actors, we need actresses, we're filling spots based upon many different special talents. So any talents that students have are showcased in the application are really important.
Thanks, Denny. Next question is about recommendations and how we look at those. Is it okay to have more than 2 teacher recommendations, or what kind of recommendations are we looking at here?
Sure. As mentioned earlier, the school counselor typically, and then 2 teacher recs. We really try to discourage any more than 2, and maybe that's for our own sanity as we get 40,000 applications times 2 teacher recs and a school rec for every application. Our preference is to keep it at just the 2. So we would appreciate that. In terms of advice for students, if possible, and not always possible, but if possible, think about teachers who might know you beyond the classroom. So you took a class with them, of course, but perhaps you interacted with them in some other venue, whether that be they were the yearbook advisor and you were the yearbook, you were on the yearbook committee, things of that nature. You get the idea. Or they were one of your coaches, you know, they were your history teacher, but also your coach of the cross country team. Those are really good choices. Again, if possible, not always the case. And in that case, or in those circumstances, simply ask some teachers who you feel know you best.
Great. Next question is about how we look at students' transcripts. Do we look and have a focus mostly on junior year grades, or how are we evaluating 3 years and that sort of thing?
We'll look at the full breadth of what a student has taken from 9th all the way through 12th grade, and in some cases mid-year grades in the 12th grade. We are going to be looking certainly at those first 3 years, and in some instances simply the courses that they've elected to take in their senior year. We don't always have the grades when we make a decision senior year, but we do have what the student elected to take senior year. So that's an important thing to understand, those senior choices. We're looking for trends. Has the student been on an upward trend? Have they spiraled downward? Was it a great first year, poor sophomore year, really good junior year, and again, a very solid and improving senior year? Those are trends that we're keeping in mind as well. Is there something in the essay or in the application in that last example that might indicate what happened in the sophomore year? And that's part of the holistic review.
Thank you. We had a few questions come in asking, you know, at Syracuse, how do you apply into certain majors? Asking about portfolios. So wondering if you can just speak a little bit about how we work that process here.
Sure. So at Syracuse, and it's somewhat unique at Syracuse, students will have to pick one of our 10 schools or colleges when applying to the university, and there are varying standards from school and college to school and college at Syracuse. So yeah, some of our schools and colleges are more competitive than others, as you might imagine. So how it works on our common application is it will first ask, are you applying for single enrollment or dual enrollment? So let's assume for right now, for this discussion, you're interested in majoring in biology in college. So you're interested in single enrollment. And then it will ask, what school or college will you be applying to at Syracuse University? In this example, biology is within the College of Arts and Sciences. So you would apply to the College of Arts and Sciences, and then it asks, to which major are you, or in which major are you most interested in, something to that effect, and you would indicate biology. Okay. Another example would be dual enrollment. So are you applying single enrollment or dual enrollment? Well, in this example, you're applying for biology. You have an interest in biology, but you're also interested in business. So you'd like to apply for dual enrollment. You could apply for the Whitman School of Management and select one of their 8 majors, and let's say you pick management, and then you could apply to simultaneously as your second school or college, the College of Arts and Sciences Biology, and by virtue of doing so, we admit you perhaps into both schools and colleges, and you graduate with a major from both schools and colleges. In terms of portfolios, we require them in the majority of our programs in visual and performing arts, with the exception of communication and rhetorical studies. It's not required. It's not required for design studies, but for the most part, and I may have missed one, but all the others, to my knowledge, are requiring a portfolio, and our architect or audition, I should specify portfolios or auditions in visual and performing arts. And you can read up on the audition and portfolio requirements by going right to the College of Visual and Performing Arts website. And for our architecture program, a portfolio is required, and all those requirements are right on the architecture website.
Thanks, Denny. And Mike just reminded me that our design studies and studio art degrees also do not require a portfolio. So
thanks, Mike.
Yes. Okay, next question. A student is looking into putting their schedule together for next year. Are there certain courses like physics or calculus that we require, or what should they take into consideration?
There's not a specific requirement, but I can tell you on behalf of our staff, if there are choices for calculus, physics, or in lieu of physics, an AP biology or AP environmental, the student should be electing to take those. It's going to help your case for admission at Syracuse University. Those are the stronger courses offered at your high schools, and you should be electing to take them to put yourself in the best position for admission at Syracuse University.
Great. We have a question.
Kate, sorry about that, Kate. I would just interject there. If you have any questions or you're concerned about your schedule moving forward, you should reach out not only to someone on our staff, and you're welcome to reach out to me directly, of course, but to your other schools of choice and get some opinions on that and receive feedback, which will help influence your senior year choices.
Excellent. Thanks, Denny. And keeping an eye on the time, maybe we have time for a couple more. Next question is, what will our supplemental essay questions be this year, or what have they been in the past?
Sure. Well, there are 7 questions on the common application. So that's not our supplemental, but I just wanted to chat briefly about that. So the common application itself, you'll choose from a drop down of 7, all of them giving you an opportunity in some way, shape, or form through that question to write a little bit about yourself and personal experiences. So that's going to be one venue. Syracuse has gone from 2 years ago requiring 2 supplemental questions on our application specific to Syracuse down to 1 this past year. And we made a change to it this past year. So the students who applied to Syracuse for this fall were the first to complete the new essay question. And it had to do to the effect of, it was a 2-part question in its simplest form: why Syracuse, and why a desire, and how they might impact a diverse and inclusive learning community like Syracuse University, and what you might bring to the table, so to speak, from that perspective. So it was a 2-part question in one essay. So I'm hard to speculate if that will remain the question. Again, hang tight with us until July 15th or so. We should have an answer for you whether or not that might change this coming year. But I suspect we'll probably remain with 1 supplemental question. What that question is, we just don't know for certain yet.
Great, thank you. And for our last question, we've had quite a few come in asking about recommendations for coursework, and also how we look at dual enrollment versus AP courses, or should a student, do we preference coursework that aligns with a student's intended major? So wondering if you can just close us out here by talking about some course selection options.
Sure. So course selection options. I talked a little bit about AP, but I see that dual enrollment's in there, and probably not everyone on the call would understand what dual enrollment is. So for the sake of everyone, I'll mention that dual enrollment is referring to a high school student who is taking college level courses while in high school, or college courses through another university while in high school. And they're dual enrollment because they're counting toward their high school, but they're also counting as college credit. College credit at Syracuse typically will transfer if you have a C or better in the course, assuming we have some course similar offered at Syracuse University. APs are generally 4s and 5s for transfer credit, sometimes 3 depending upon the course. And there's also international baccalaureate courses. So some of you are in what's called IB, or international baccalaureate programs, and credits for 6 and 7s higher level courses on the IB. So those are really competitive high school courses that are offered, and that's going to enhance your opportunity. And I have to be clear, you're not all coming from the same places. So in some instances, APs, IBs, and dual enrollment courses are not offered at your high school. And so we have an obligation to be fair to those students as well. So we're, again, looking at what's available to you at your high school, and did you challenge yourself within that environment? realizing you don't all come from the same environment. And that's, I think, really important context. The takeaway here tonight for many of you would be to challenge yourselves as best you can from an academic perspective in high school.
All right, I think that is the end of our questions. But just a quick plug, if you have a question that comes up or if something didn't get answered for you this evening, feel free to reach out to us.
And Kate, I'll mention, we didn't get to every question, so I just want to reinforce, we'll get to those of you who we didn't answer your question within the next couple of days with a response. I want to thank you all for listening. I hope this was helpful to you. Reach out to me. You truly have a friend, and you have many friends at Syracuse University. So reach out to me personally, reach out to our staff. You will find on our website, when you click on Meet the Staff, we have our staff with regional assignments. So it's a nice connection to perhaps reach out to the staff member responsible for your particular region of the world and make that connection and ask them a question, and they'll get back to you quickly. And I wanted to thank once again Kate, Ken, and Mike for all the hard work behind the scenes in doing this. And thanks so much for listening. And I'll leave you with a Go Orange. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks for joining us.